Welcome to Cats and Rats Podcast, covering your Florida Panthers.
Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Cats and Rats Podcast. This is episode 22, the Zach Dalpe episode. I mean, my favorite AHLer right there. Big goal last year in the playoffs versus Boston. But, you know, this is a different type of episode because we're going to be discussing a lot of guys in this episode that have come from the AHL. Because this is a recap of what the Panthers did at the NHL Draft. And talk a little bit about our top 5 prospects here. But first, let me introduce the guy who usually does the intros, but we're going to switch it up today. Mr. Kirby Lupel, how you doing today, sir?
How's it going, Cody? How's it going? We're on video for the first time,
yes,
collectively
sir.
As a group here. So we've got our shirts here today. I've got my Hockey Hall of Fame shirt on. Anyone that's watching the video here today, maybe Bob, maybe now Barkov, Stanley Cup champions.
I got the greatest drink ever. I got my Kool-Aid shirt on here.
I lived off growing up.
Always look, red's the best flavor.
Red. Oh wow, red's the one always stuck around my cupboard the longest. You know, blue, purple, green.
That's absolutely.
So you are red? Are you a red Gatorade or Powerade fan?
I'm yellow Gatorade and blue Powerade.
Oh, interesting. Okay, I like blue across the board. So put some blue Gatorade up in the fridge right now.
But Kirby, we have ourselves a special guest here. This is the second time on the Cats and Rats episode. On the Cats and Rats podcast. If you hear our spaces the last couple of years, you will recognize this guy. This guy is bread and butter here is the prospects. NHL draft nerd, as I like to call him. Our analytics guy, the guy who says analytics win you championships, and me and Kirby are on the opposite side of that spectrum. But I'll admit we need them to win. Mr. Vincent Shipe. How we doing, Vincent?
Hello, Cody. Hey, Kirby. Thanks for having me once again. You guys are not doing a very good job at trying to get rid of me, just saying.
Well, this fits so perfectly here, so.
I'm doing really, really well. How are you guys doing?
Great. And Vince is the perfect guy for this podcast, episode, because considering the fact that knowing our prospects, there's really not that many people that know more about our prospects than Vince here. And actually, he was at the NHL draft for round 1. And as me and Kirby said, our T-shirts, Vince here got a little T-shirt from the draft that he's wearing right now. Vince?
Yes, I am. So I was in Vegas for the draft. I was at a career conference hosted by an organization called Sport Management Worldwide. Fantastic organization, great people, great panels. It was really fun. And they were giving out some T-shirts, and I got one that says, "Got analytics."
Oh boy,
it fits me so well.
It does.
both in terms of how it actually fits and my interests and personality. So I figured it's free. They're giving them away. I gotta have it.
Yeah, I would have bought that shirt for you if I ever found one of them.
It's the thought that counts. Thank you for the consideration, Cody.
Yeah, because I know Kirby's an old school hockey fan. Analytics are not his thing. He probably didn't know what half of them even mean.
30%.
I see his eye twitching on the video here. The more we say the word,
70-30 eye test. Okay, give me some credit.
Yeah,
I look at starts after we get some players, which we'll have to mention one later on.
Yeah,
podcast episode.
That's the closest thing you get to analytics are the post-game charts after every game.
If they work for the guys that I like.
Brief tangent. Doug McLean was one of the speakers. And he himself said he thinks analytics is a very useful tool in favor of it. And he's been in the NHL for around 20 years. So if Doug McLean's cool with it, then you should be too.
But you talked to him, Vince, and I interviewed him last year. Great interview, and you had a good talk with him as well. So,
absolutely, Doug McLean's one of the best people you could ever talk with. He's a great guy to talk with, very personable, and he knows the game. Like he's a perfect media guy because he knows how to play all the media hits, but you can tell he also knows the game. Like if there was an inside the NHL, I would want Doug McLean on it for sure.
Yep. I mean, but speaking of the draft and like your experience there, watching back at home, because I did watch the first round, it seemed like the NHL hit it out the park with this draft. Like, especially with the Sphere. Like, how did it look like in person? Was it like even crazier? Like,
I think hit it out of the park might be an understatement, honestly. It was absolutely crazy in person. I hurt my neck, actually, trying to stare up at the big screen.
Yeah.
Because it basically is the entire. So the sphere, basically, the part of it that you can see is like it's kind of a semicircle. Like if those that are seeing on video see the shape I'm making, kind of like half of a soccer ball. Yeah. This entire half of it is all lit up. It's all screen. So even if you're sitting like in the 100 level, you don't really get the full experience. You have to kind of be sitting higher up in the 400 level to really kind of get that full immersion.
I was gonna say at 400 level, some people maybe get motion sickness. I heard like it was a trip for some people. I heard
if there's a bunch of stuff moving around, maybe. But if it's the static graphics, which most of it was pretty static, you would have probably had a better experience up there. But just everything was amazing. The graphics were amazing. The way it was set up was perfect. It was just really, really tons of fun. And whether or not they end up decentralizing the draft, I think they should just have it at the Sphere forever, because it was so fun. It was such a great experience. And you're so much closer to the action in there than you would be if you were in an arena.
Yeah. So. What was it like seeing, like, because for those who don't know or haven't seen the draft, like, you could see every team has a table.
Yep.
And like all the GMs are there, probably the head scouts, their assistant GM. It wasn't like pretty cool to see, like, get up and close to see like every like team's table. Like, Florida's team, when you were there, they really did nothing. They had no first.
Yeah. Well, they were also way on the other side of the Sphere from where I was sitting. Like, you would have needed binoculars to see them. But go on with the question.
But what was it like seeing like those, like the GMs and the management people just like up and close working, especially for the rebuilding teams where this is a huge night for them?
Yeah, that was really interesting. You saw a lot of tables that were like really engaged in a lot of discussions. We were sitting, the closest table to where I was sitting was Toronto. So you could see Haley Wickenheiser, you could see Brad Tree Living, you could see even Craig Berube as well. And there was a lot of discussion going on, and there were other tables nearby. I think Chicago was one, Colorado was another. And every time you would see like a lot of discussion, me and a couple of the other guys that I was with that I'd met at the conference, we would just kind of lean over to each other and be like, hey, they're talking a lot over at Calgary. They're talking a lot over at Toronto. They're talking a lot over at Anaheim. And we would just kind of sort of pick out, where's this guy? Where's this other guy? Oh, look, there's Luke Robitaille at LA's table. There's Pat Verbeek at Anaheim's table. And it was basically kind of like a giant game of Guess Who, where we're just kind of pointing out all the people that
I probably would have done the same thing, to be honest.
Yeah. Montreal was nearby too. I was near a bunch of guys from Montreal, so we just spent the entire time like, what's Kent Hughes talking about? Oh, there's Jeff. He's talking with Jeff Molson, and Jeff Gorton's there too.
Molson was Marty. There, the owner?
Jeff Molson was there. He was like sitting right in between Gorton and Hughes for most of it. There was Marty St. Louis was there too.
Yeah, I mean, but talking about the draft, because you light up when you talk about the draft, and I mean, like, I get, like, you probably would have been like even more of like a stickler back when the Panthers were bad. Thank God, thank God we weren't at this point now. But now, like, I know, like, you're happy with the success, but the part is like, damn, I wish we could have one bad year. I could look at a prospect or something. But considering that, you do have a database that you made. You said that
I do, but before we get into that, I do want to say one thing. I would trade every first round pick that we had for the next 30 years if it meant we could have what we just had. Like that, like there's no equal for winning a championship. There's like, just even standing, they even had the Stanley Cup there at the conference, so I even have a picture with it. Just standing next to it, and you're just in awe at this. It's almost on the platform. It's almost as tall as I am. And for those who know me, I'm about 6 feet tall. And you're just floored by this massive, massive trophy. And you want to touch it, but there's a part of you that's like, I'll save the touching for when I win it.
But it feels good to know that the Panthers are officially going to be on the Stanley Cup. The engraving process that just started, I believe.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I would trade anything.
Like the aura of it's like immense.
Yeah, there's no equal to winning a cup. There's no equal to winning a championship. All the prospects in all the world, as fun as it is, as much as I love talking about it, I wouldn't mind if we never had a guy that made the league for the next 5 years. Granted, we've gotta if we want to keep winning. But you know, we won the cup, and that's the most important thing. I wouldn't trade that for the world.
Vince, we have your database to unveil here to our
I
audience.
forgot that was the most important. I forgot that was the reason I was here.
Oh God!
Yeah, we're gonna put a separate video up too, probably on our channel here sometime next week here.
Yes,
with
on
some
the
nice
YouTube channel
pictures from your travels, so it'll be nice.
Yeah, I sent you a lot of the photo library from the Sphere, not of Vegas itself, because that didn't really relate to it. But if you want, I can send you some of the Vegas pictures. It was fun.
I won't ask the community on that one.
Yeah,
it certainly brought the room together when the ants came over. That's for sure. It's always a fun conversation. But obviously, we've traded away a lot.
Floor is yours, sir. Floor's yours. You take
floor's mine. So obviously, we've traded away a lot of draft picks in recent years. And I'll admit, last year I wasn't 100% certain on some of the guys that we would pick. Wasn't really sure what kind of guys we would be looking at. So when Kirby and Cody approached me and asked, hey, who are some of the guys that you think we could go after? And I really couldn't answer that question. I said, well, I'll find a way to answer that question. So I spent many months researching who was available, where certain guys were projected to go, and their information, where they were ranked, how they were playing this season, some more advanced numbers, which I'll get into. And I took all that information and made it into an app that can be accessed on the internet for free. And there's about 107 guys that I had on the list. I added the guys that we picked into there as well. And basically the whole point of it was see who's out there and kind of get opinions on who I think we should be taking. So with that being said, I think it's time to get this puppy going. Yep, here we go.
So anyone that's watching on the YouTube channel or just listening to this podcast, make sure to jump over to our YouTube channel. Vince is going to pull up some of the database, but he's going to explain it to the listeners as well here.
Yep, here.
Yeah.
Oh, look
all right.
Atos Koivu. I'm pretty sure he got drafted by Montreal, if I'm not mistaken.
You are correct. He did. The reason why he's showing up here first is the way I coded everything. I had it defaulted to the first name on the list.
Alphabetical order.
And it's alphabetical AA. Good luck trying to beat that alphabetically. So his is the first name that's up here. I basically designed this entire thing using R and R Studio. So analytical programming. I don't want to get too in the weeds with the coding part because that can be a little bit complicated.
Kirby, you would lose Kirby, but you wouldn't lose me because I'm also
you're the comp sci major.
Yeah.
You'd lose a big portion of the audience, but
it's okay. Basically, the too long didn't read of it is basically I took all the information that you see here and put it into Excel spreadsheets. And the entire purpose of the code was just to make it from Excel spreadsheet to what you're seeing here, if you're watching this on video, obviously. So as you can see, I have the player's name listed up here, a table of their biographical information. So just what position they are, how they shoot, their height, their weight, where they're from, what's their birthday. Here's some rankings from some major media outlets, NHL Central Scouting, Bob McKenzie, Kirby's favorite, some other outlets like Craig Button on TSN, The Hockey News with Tony Ferrari, Jason Bucala on Sportsnet, Dauber Prospects, Smart Scouting, or Smart Scouting, if you actually are pronouncing it the Boston way, and FC Hockey and Flow Hockey. Just their season stats from this past season. I had to make everything kind of an acronym just so that way it didn't crash everything. Excuse me, I just have to reload. Sometimes it does that. I'll have to reload it sometimes. But if you're wondering what these abbreviations are, the key for it is right here. Just a table of their strengths and weaknesses, and then some interactive plots where you can change around what the axes on each graph is. And you can just kind of mess around and have fun with it. Again, there will be a link to this if you want to see it for yourself. But the point of the plot is mostly just to compare the selected player, who is this red dot here, with other players from the list, which are these dark blue dots. Yes, I did use Panthers colors. Thank you for asking. Some guys that could be going in the top picks in this year's draft here, and the tan would be from the past 2 years. So just finding comparables.
Yep. But boy, you got some names there. I mean,
yeah, there's a lot of names.
You want to start from the top here, Vince? Obviously, you weren't there to see the draft picks because you were just there for round one.
He was at the airport with his flight delayed.
I was at the airport suffering from a flight delay. Thank you, Spirit Airlines. Thank you.
I tried to text. I tried to
to
text him after our first pick, and all I got was, "Yeah, I don't know this guy."
I'm not gonna lie. I wasn't in the mood. I just Googled something. I ended up sending that to you. It's like, that's what I found on him.
Because.
Yeah.
Like, if it's not football, like, I have no idea about any draft. Like, outside the first round, I'm just like, okay, just like, and now we can kind of like segue into the next couple segments here. I mean, speaking of former prospects, the Panthers did sign another defenseman today, a guy that all three of us wanted at the start of this free agent window, and that is Mr. Adam Boqvist, coming on from a contract buyout of the Columbus Blue Jackets. And Kirby wanted this guy at the trade deadline.
Yeah.
He wanted all defensemen. I wanted one forward and one defenseman here.
Right-handed shot defenseman.
Thank God.
Kirby loves his right shot defenseman. He loves them.
I mean,
the amount that Cody and I have to listen to on our post-game spaces about, our power play's not working. Our power play's not working. We don't have enough guys for both units. I think we have a little bit of internal competition now, which we talked about in this podcast, Cody on Nate Schmidt, and now Adam Boqvist here.
Yeah, I think power play one is Boqvist to lose. Like, right now, I have him pegged as second pair with Nico Mikkola. And, you have Ekblad, Forsling, Mikkola, Boqvist, and then you go Kulikov, Schmidt, which I think is a way, like, the thing was, like, I didn't like Bjorn Fott as our 7th D. I don't know.
Same.
I just never trusted it. Now with Balinskis as our 7th D, I'm, like, way more confident now. Like, even if we lose a guy, we know Uvis Balinskis to come in and play meaningful minutes. And
we're not having to rely on him in the top 6 like I talked to you about on our last podcast episode, Cody. He looked real rough in that Boston game at home in the regular season there, kind of lost playing time. And Maurice, when he loses favor with those depth guys, they end up losing their spot kind of in the rotation. And now you have the depth there with Boqvist and Schmidt. I feel a lot better this offseason with their defense. So bad.
Yeah, it's just, but Vince, like, your thoughts on that about, so once again, because all three of us wanted him. Like, the minute we saw him get bought out, we all three of us like, Panther now.
Yeah. I like the pickup. It's a classic low risk, high reward move.
Classic Zito.
Yeah, Boqvist, a bit of a smaller defenseman. I think he's only about 5'11". Puck moving style, very offensive minded. His defensive metrics were pretty poor last year.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Is that because of his style of play?
It wasn't exactly a good system. I think it's a little bit of both. It wasn't a great system in Columbus. He's struggled a bit. I think he's also had some injury concerns in recent years. But it's a league minimum deal. It's a cheap deal. If it works, great. If it doesn't, you can wash your hands of it pretty quickly. I think it fits with the type of guys that Zito tends to get, and I think there's a very good chance that it'll work out. I like Adam Boqvist, and I think if he buys into the defensive system that they're going to teach him, and he contributes to that part of the game, I think it'll be fine. And if you're pairing him with a guy like Nico Mikkola, who's 6'4", 6'5", and has that long reach, and
could take the physicality, could take the beating for him at points.
That, and also he can counteract the fact that Boqvist is a little bit on the smaller side with the fact that he's bigger. Like, it's easier to balance it out that way.
It reminds me of when Forsling first came to Florida and they paired him with Radko Gudas, because Gustav Forsling, he's nowhere near what he was when he first came to Florida. He was a little bit more, a lot more finesse, not as heavy along the boards as he was like this last season in the playoffs. And you paired it with a guy like Radko Gudas, who's good at all those things. They kind of like even that out. The thing is with Boqvist, I have to remind myself is he's played for some god awful teams, and I mean god awful. Like he was originally drafted.
It's not been good for him.
Yep, originally drafted by Chicago, came in when they were rebuilding, and I mean this was I think his first season was the 21 season where it was like that the Central Division. Florida, Florida, Carolina, Dallas, like Chicago, those teams, Nashville.
Never forget the Discover Central Division.
Boy, we could not beat Carolina that year. But
and Cody,
the only one of those teams we couldn't beat in the regular season. The only one. I never understood it. To this day, I still don't get it.
Cody, the management too, and the coaching changes too that Boqvist has been under it.
Yeah, and just and he goes to Columbus, where he was the main prospect in the Seth Jones deal. Who, for those who don't remember that whole ordeal, boy, that contract at Arnold really, really messed up the defense market. I've said it before, and I'll keep saying it. Those two were the worst contracts, and that's what really set the defenseman to a higher level now. The problem is just like what Boqvist was. He goes to Columbus, and they're a train wreck there too. I mean, they had Brad Larson, who never worked out there, and it's just been constant turmoil for him because he goes for Brad Larson, and then they go to hire Mike Babcock, and the whole phone going through the phone thing that Spitting Chicklets came out with, no one believed him. They came out to be true, and that ordeal happened, and then they scrambled and they went and got Pascal Vincent, who, in my opinion, once again, he was thrown to the fire, but guess what? He didn't. He kind of poured gasoline on the flames, if you ask me. And there wasn't a single defenseman on Columbus's roster that was even good last year. Like, all three of us love Zach Werenski. Boy, was he awful for them last year again.
When he was healthy, was he even healthy for most?
I think that he at the start of the year he missed it, but I think he was good for the rest of the year, if I remember correctly. Because
he's had a lot of injury problems the last few years. Werenski has,
and it's funny. You know who Adam Boqvist's main partner in Columbus was?
Eric and Branson,
Kirby's guy.
Well, if it's Goodbranson, he's playing on his offside.
Yeah, but he's
would they be playing Goodbranson on his offside? Because I mean, he doesn't
they're
really
both
do much with the puck,
right?
Yeah.
I think they would play Goodbranson on the off because he doesn't really do much with the puck.
Yeah, but Goodbranson's barely good on his right on the correct side. I don't know how much better he could be on the actual.
Well, he was good with Zadorov in Calgary, anyways.
That was 3 years ago, Kirby.
You can't criticize a guy like him when he has no help there either.
Typical Kirby, bringing up his Calgary flame.
Exhibit 1 of why Kirby doesn't like analytics, because Derek DeBranton does not have any good analytics whatsoever.
He was top of the charts a few times this year. But anyways.
Man, top of the charts. Shoot. He only brought up top of the charts when Montour was there. I don't want to hear it. I'm so glad I don't have to deal with that no more. I'm so glad. I don't have to hear, Montour didn't have that great again.
You guys are going to miss it. You guys are going to miss it when season gets underway here, but we'll see.
Look, I'm going to miss a lot of guys. I think Montour's probably number 2 of the guys I'm going to miss.
Montour and Stenlund I'm going to hear a lot from.
I think Stenlund we're going to miss a lot, depending on how Nosek does. But
depending on if Nosek can stay healthy, I think is the big one.
Big portion of that.
Yeah, but when in low light reels, I'll just never forget when Kevin Stenley got pickpocketed by Connor Bedard and he scores the goal all in the same motion in that Chicago game at home.
Everyone has a bad day at the office sometimes.
Chicago just gives us,
err is human.
Chicago gives us fits, man.
Chicago and Philly, I noticed.
So with Boqvist, then we're giving kind of a thumbs up here. He's going to see some quarterback time.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely hilarious because this offseason is just Bill Zito in a nutshell. There has not been a new free agent that was brought in that got signed more than $1 million. Not one guy got
and only
$1 million.
One guy on a 2-year term, I believe.
And that was Greer.
AJ Greer has the highest AAV of the group at $850K.
And he's probably the worst player of the group.
Yeah.
He also played for Calgary, so Kirby might be pretty familiar with him.
Like the guys.
No, I actually more familiar with his game in Boston than Calgary.
Boston, he gave us fits. Calgary last year, he got hurt, played only like 30-something games.
Yeah, pretty gruesome injury.
But boy, just
yeah.
We
kind of went detour away from the prospects here. Do we want to get into our picks here and through Vince's database again? If you guys are watching on the YouTube channel, he'll talk you through it on the audio portion.
Yeah, he'll pull up the prospects on his database because I believe he said he added our current prospects in there. But first, we got to hear from our favorite sponsor, Kirby, and that's Caneswear.
Yeah, Caneswear. Are you guys picking up any of their merchandise right now? Stanley Cup stuff? I haven't got any yet. By the way, I have a contest coming unrelated to Caneswear, but it's going to be a pretty cool contest. I think we'll get a Caneswear contest going here as well, too. But you guys geared up? Panthers Fever is here. Caneswear and Davies is a place for all your Florida Panthers needs. They have the latest gear for our favorite NHL team. Jerseys, polos, t-shirts, hoodies, hats, and more. Caneswear has you covered. Stop by their store in Davie or at pantherswear.com. Again, that's pantherswear, wear.com for all your Panthers gear.
This is the Cats and Rats podcast. And now, a special segment.
Vincent is going to dive in here with Linus Eriksson, second-round pick, 58th overall from the Florida Panthers. So Vincent, anyone that's watching on the YouTube channel, he's going to pull it up here on his database, and he's going to explain to everyone here in our listening audience. And we'll break down the 6 selections by the Florida Panthers here in the 2024 NHL entry draft here, Vincent.
Thank you, Kirby. So the Panthers traded up to get this pick. They traded their 2025 second and their 2024 seventh, which was the very last pick in the draft, to get the 58th pick, which they selected Linus Eriksson, who, as you can see here, is a left-handed Swedish center who stands about 6 foot tall and weighs 190 pounds. Not exactly undersized, so good size. NHL Central Scouting had him as their 10th best European skater, and pretty much every other outlet that I looked at for this program had him in the top 50 other than Jason Bukala, who had him at 52. He's split time this year between the Swedish under-20 league and their second professional tier, known as the Allsvenskan, in the Djurgården system. His scoring rate, as you could imagine, was a lot better at the under-20 level. It's very common. That happens a lot. Nothing to be too concerned about. But his ratio of goals to assists and his penalty minutes per game stayed pretty much the same. So fundamentally, I don't think there's a big difference. It's just a matter of production. That was the difference there. Played more with the men's side, which is good. You want to see a young kid, especially in Europe, playing more with men at this age. In terms of his strengths, he's a very smart player, very high, very strong hockey IQ. Very typical of Bill Zito to pick a guy with good hockey IQ. It's kind of a habit of his. So he doesn't deviate from his well-trodden path here either. Very strong and competent 200-foot player. His skating is a strength as well. And the way he plays, it's very projectable to the professional style. Good along the wall, good at the forecheck. Can throw the body around when he needs to. In terms of his weakness...
Vince, I threw a comparable to you, Lars Eller.
That's a very fair comparison. I think that's a very good comparison for Linus. It would be Lars Eller.
Very similar strengths and weaknesses to what Anton Lundell was pegged at when he came out, because Anton Lundell, I believe when he was drafted, was right along the same lines, 200-foot game, hockey IQ off the charts. But the problem was, not many people were worried about. A lot of people were worried about his offensive side of his game, which seems to be the case with Eriksson here.
Very true. I do think that Lundell probably had more offensive upside. Yeah. I think with him, the question was just more, where was that upside going to be? And also, I do think it's important that I'm pretty sure Lundell spent his entire draft year playing with IFK Helsinki's main side. He played with their men's side for the whole season, and Eriksson split time. So I do think that is a distinction here, because usually the best prospects in Europe, which Lundell was, they tend to play the full season with the men's team playing against men at the professional level. Again, that's not nearly a knock on Eriksson because, again, there's only so many spots on a pro roster that exist. If he has to split time and play at the under 20 level, that's fine. And again, as you can see, he did really well. But yeah, the weaknesses for him, his playmaking abilities are questionable and the offensive upside is a bit lacking. But that being said, his floor is pretty high. In terms of projection, I have his ceiling as a third line center. Again, Lars Eller at his peak, that's what he was. And if he doesn't hit his exact peak, he'll still be a capable bottom six shutdown defensive center with some offensive punch. Imagine a bit like Kevin Stenlund, but a bit smaller and probably a little bit better offensively. If you want to just look at the plot here, just to kind of see who are some people he's comparable to, I'm gonna go quick on this. Probably the main one I want to point out is Juraj Slavkovsky right there. Again, Eriksson is right here, this red dot. Slavkovsky was the first overall pick in 2022, scored at a pretty similar points per game throughout his entire season, and his NHL equivalency of 17 is about it's only one higher than Eriksson's of 16. That's not saying that Eriksson's going to play like Juraj Slavkovsky and get an 8-year, $60 million contract or whatever the number was. But if that's who you're being compared to, if that's who your production is close to, it's not a bad sign. So even if the numbers don't necessarily blow you away, and again, these kinds of numbers aren't off the charts, doesn't wow you, it's not a death blow by any sense of the word at all.
And one thing we have to remember about the Slavkovsky year, that draft was extremely weak.
That was seen as a very weak draft class. As you can imagine, a lot of these dots up here, it's Adam Fantilli, Connor Bedard, and the name's slipping.
You just saw it.
Michkov. Yeah, sorry about that. But yeah, the 2022 draft class was notoriously weak at the top.
Yep.
But even then, if your production is in a ballpark with some guys that were taken in the top 64 guys in 2022, again, not necessarily a bad sign. And if you just want to look at total points throughout the year, the guy I just want to highlight is Igor Chernyshев, who was a projected first-round pick this year, scored the same just total number of points throughout the season as Eriksson. And Chernyshев, he didn't go in the first round, but he ended up going 33rd to San Jose. So while Eriksson's ceiling may not be particularly high, his floor certainly is. And it's one of those low-risk, high-reward, very smart cerebral picks that, again, Bill Zito will tend to gravitate towards. So I think Eriksson, very solid pick here. Again, if he turns into someone like Lars Eller, who has had a very long career in the NHL as a third-line shutdown defensive center, I don't think anyone would complain that much.
No. And like Zito has his types, like his drafts have all been eerily similar here. But the next
he has his types.
Yeah. On to our next one here.
The next pick, me and Vince, I think this is both of our favorite picks of this draft. Like I love this pick.
Oh, totally. So for those who are listening and can't see the name, this player is Matvei Shuravin, drafted 97th overall in the third round. As a Russian defenseman who stands at 6'4" and weighs 218 pounds. So it's a big-bodied, tall defenseman, which I know our co-host, your guys' co-host, it's your show. Nick isn't here right now, but this is the type of Nick would love this guy because he's a big-bodied defenseman, and that's the one thing that Nick has been begging for us to go and get.
But he's not
the first time he visited America, guys, was just a few days before the draft here. To Fort Lauderdale area, I read. So interesting. He'll be.
It was a sign.
Yeah. We haven't really dipped into that KHL pool a lot, but has Zito kind of done that a little bit with our goaltending prospect there, Vince?
Namely,
who's dabbled in a little bit here.
He's dipped his toe in the pool in Russia because if you look at his 2021 draft class, he took 2 guys out of Russia. In 2022, I don't think he took any, but in 2023, he did take 1 guy out of Russia in the 7th round. So he's dipped his toe into that KHL pool before. So he's not exactly opposed to it. He's not one of those GMs who won't draft Russians at all. The nationality he seems to draft most is Swedes.
Swedes,
like
Finns.
Especially in Europe. No,
Swedes. Which we never historically did.
Yeah, I actually brief tangent now that you bring it up. In his entire GM tenure, so from 2010 to 2019, Dale Talon drafted 4 Swedes: Jonathan Nielsen, Rasmus Bengtsson, Linus Nass, and Hugo Fagerblom.
Holy heck.
In half that time, 5 drafts, Zito's drafted 8 Swedes, or players based out of Sweden. Because I'm including Sandis Vilmanis in that, who's Latvian, but was playing in Sweden at the time he was picked. He was playing in the Luleå system. Zito's picked in Sweden a lot more than Talon ever did. I that's something I just kind of noticed.
Yes, but Sweden like develops the type of players that Zito likes, just like
it used to be Finnish players, but now the Swedish players.
It used to be Finnish players, but the problem seems to be that Finnish players haven't been developing with that same upside that you're seeing from Swedish players. Like Swedish and Finnish players do have similar attributes. But with Sweden, it's like the well is a little bit more consistent. You're getting guys with maybe a little bit more higher end potential. Yep. And that's kind of where I think you're seeing the staff gravitate towards. They've invested a lot in European scouting, especially in Sweden. They reorganized their European scouting staff recently and made Joachim Hedlund, who was a longtime member of the scouting staff, they made him the director, replacing the departed Jari Kekalainen, who, of course, was Finnish and was a main influence behind a lot of our drafting out of Finland.
Mainly the Barkov pick.
Most notably the Barkov pick, absolutely.
Thank you, Kekalainen.
Thank you, Jari. Yes, thank you. But yeah, the way that Zito's operated the staff, at least in terms of Europe, they've gravitated more towards Sweden than they have from Finland. And I do think that's a noticeable trend. But anyways, back to Matvei Shuravin here. Another guy highly rated by NHL Central Scouting. They had him as their 15th best European skater. The way Central Scouting works, I probably should have explained this with Eriksson. But the way Central Scouting works is they rank North American and European skaters separately, as well as European and North American goalies. They rate them all separately.
Wow, that's so stupid.
It is what it is. But pretty much every other outlet that rated Shuravin, it was a little bit all over the board. Obviously, FC Hockey had him going in the late first at 25. Dauber Prospects had him going around where he ended up going. Dauber had him at 92. But it's not that really off the board, because obviously all the rankings except for Flow Hockey, you didn't have him ranked, had him ahead of where he ended up going. But anyways, he split time between all 3 levels of Russian hockey in the CSKA Moscow system. So the Red Army, for those who wonder where the Red Army distinction comes in, this is the Red Army team here. I played 11 games for the main side, getting 2 assists. Played 5 games at the VHL level, which is the Russian AHL. 5 games, no points. And in the MHL, played 22 games, Russian juniors, with 7 assists and 26 penalty minutes. In terms of his strengths, very smooth, very efficient skater. Another smart and cerebral defensive player. He uses that size well, good at knocking guys off the puck. And his passing, at least in the offensive zone, is quite good. There's actually, let me just move it. If you notice, his NHL equivalency of 14 at the KHL is very high. That's because the KHL is a very strong league, and the NHL equivalency metric takes into account points per game. That's just the way that works. Just something notable if anyone's wondering why that number is so high. Just, again, for the people on video. In terms of his weaknesses, his shot will lack power and velocity, and there is a major red flag to his game with he very much struggles in transition, especially at getting the puck out of his own end. Brief rule of thumb, just for anyone who might be a bit uninitiated. If a defenseman struggles to get the puck out of his own end, that's a major red flag. If a forward struggles to get the puck into the opposing end, that's a red flag. So this is a major red flag here for Shuravin. He's going to need to fix that if he wants an opportunity to succeed at the NHL level.
I wish he was a right-handed shot defenseman. Zito goes with another left-handed shot guy here. I see.
That's
a big
true.
Guy, like that right side,
Yeah,
you're gonna knock him. Like, come on.
Take what you can get when you can get it, and Shirovin is far from a bad pick. But
I think we should start looking at the right side with the guys that we have locked up left-hand side. I know that's down the road.
I do agree. Yeah. I do agree with that sentiment of, look towards right shot defensemen as well. But I wouldn't be surprised if Shirovin was a guy they had a, late second, early third round grade on. Like, let's say they had him at like 75 on their 100-man list, and you can get him at 97. That's not exactly bad. And
the only defenseman taken in this draft too, Vincent, which I wanted to see more with the 6 selections. I know you take best available, but I kind of think,
Yeah, but this was
I can understand that.
But this was a pretty it was a pretty weak defenseman draft this year.
It was outside of the top group of your Zeev Williams, your Zane Parekh, your Carter Yakimchuk, Sam Dickinson, Artem Levshinov, outside of those guys that you pretty much all saw go in the top 15. This was a bit of a mixed bag in terms of defense. I think one guy, Aaron Kiviharju, even, who was a projected first rounder at one point, he ended up falling to 122nd overall. I think he got picked in like the 4th or 5th round by Minnesota. Like this, like when guys who were projected in the first round end up falling all the way to 3rd, 4th, that usually is not a sign of a strong defensive class. And again, outside of the top guys, this wasn't that big of a class.
Yeah. Which is why you saw the run of defensemen go so early this draft, because my best, outside of Artem Levshinov, my best favorite defenseman in this draft was Zeev Boom.
Yeah, I had Zeev as my second best defenseman. I really liked Zeev.
And he fell to 12 to Minnesota because here's the thing, for those who didn't see it, the Anaheim pick once again, back-to-back years, just screwed the draft up again. Because
even more so this year.
Oh, yeah, even more so this year, because last year you could at least make the argument that Leo Carlson was like that second, third type of player.
Like if
Carlson wasn't going second, I would have bet money he was going third.
But
Leo Cody doesn't mention there that the American defenseman slips and all the Canadians were going above there. So that was a point of emphasis there. It was the Canadian draft.
Here he goes again.
Canada still can't develop a goalie, but I mean,
you'll see how important defense is next year in the Four Nations.
Yeah, you're going to defend the house, and your goalie's going to let in a stink.
We saw Charlie McAvoy. We saw Adam Fox now. Quinn Hughes kind of get bullied around in that Nashville series.
We got goalied quite a bit in the first 3 rounds. How many of those were Canadian goalies?
Some of these guys not showing up when the lights are the brightest, Cody, on the back end there. That's going to be a problem for America.
Yeah, but we had some goalie troubles. We went through a goalie gauntlet the first 3 rounds, and how many of those guys are Canadian? Oh, yeah, 0.
How many of them were American? Swayman was one.
Cody will never be hard on defense that he likes. He'll never be hard on defense that he likes. But.
Same thing with you. But
Anaheim going with Beckett Seneca third was... Even he was shocked.
For those who have not seen the video, it is absolutely hilarious. When the guy's even shocked that he went that high, it's pretty funny. He's going to be a great player, but that one started the whole it just went south from there. I was like, man, I don't know what's going to happen here because
it's kind of funny because Lindstrom going to Columbus at 4, again, tangent here, but Lindstrom going to Columbus at 4 wasn't that crazy. Demidov going to Montreal wasn't really that crazy. I don't know how many people had Tij Ginla going at 6 to Utah, though. Everybody was wanting him to fall to 9 so Calgary could take him. And
I think it's because why Lindstrom and Ginla went so early, and it's because people want to copy what Florida's doing. Because what teams saw with Florida this year, the Sam Bennett mainly, they're like, oh, we need some more bite.
Those guys are wingers.
Yeah.
So I think it's more the Kachuk factor.
Yeah, the Kachuk, whatever you think it is. I just think they realize we need more forwards with more bite to them.
Yeah, when guys going overseas for the defense, it's a little risky.
They want forwards with bite. They want forwards who can. Again, like Matthew Tkachuk does more than just your typical power forward, at least your old school power forward. They kind of want that. They kind of want the new school power forward is what's in vogue right now. So that's why Columbus will take Lindstrom, and even kind of to a point why they kind of took Fantilli last year. That's why Utah goes with Tij, and just so on and so on.
But our next pick.
Let's move it along.
Yeah. Well, anyways, I forgot the most important thing, the projection for Sherravin. Yeah. I think I have bottom pair, play-killing defensive D-man with mostly a PK specialist. Could hit second pair if his offensive game improves. A lot of the stuff I see with him, it's very similar to what I read about Evan Naus, who I really like, one of our prospects. But I think Naus is probably a little bit better in transition and had more offensive upside.
Yeah.
But anyways, next pick.
Yeah. For comp, this guy, I mean, he's the comp that I think when I watch Sherravin, and this guy's like out of the league because the guy's an idiot, but Slava Voinov was the guy who like popped out to me when I saw Sherravin like play on the ice.
Fair comparison, yeah.
Complete dunce off the ice. I mean, complete idiot. But
if Sherravin doesn't have those off ice problems, I think it'll be okay.
Yeah. But we're gonna go with another Swedish center here.
Yeah. Again, Zito likes his Swedes. He's picked 8 of them. This is his 8th Swede, or at least 8th Sweden-based player.
Pretty good size, 6'3", 187. Right.
Yep. So again, for the people who are listening and they're getting tantalized here, Simon Zether is the pick here at 129th overall in the 4th round. As Kirby just mentioned, Swedish center, 6'3", big size. The 18th ranked European skater by NHL Central Scouting. And all the other outlets that I had here that ranked him, so Bob McKenzie, Craig Button, Dauber Prospects, Smart Scouting, all other than FC Hockey, all had him in the top 100. So another pick where the rankings don't say this is off the board. Again, for what that's worth. Is it worth that much when you get around this point in the draft? Maybe not so much, but it's interesting information to at least have.
You're looking at below 5% here for these guys to make it into the NHL at some point.
Yeah, you're looking at below 5%. But that being said, the draft was in Las Vegas, and if there's a place to gamble, it's Las Vegas. So Zether split his time between the J20 National and the highest tier of Swedish professional hockey, the SHL, in the Rogel system. He really dominated the under 20 level, putting up 27 points in 18 games. And then in the SHL, there's a reason for that. I'll get to that. He spent most of his season in the SHL with 42 games, only got 4 points, but he did not play a lot in terms of time on ice. His time on ice was really low, and that is a very common occurrence for young European players. It's kind of sort of also the problem that you see in the KHL where, these young guys are talented, but unless it's Torpedo Nizhny Novgorod under Igor Larionov this past year, they're not playing their young guys. They're playing their young guys 4th line, bottom pair, 7-8 minutes a night. So, the production, I get it. It doesn't look good. I'm not trying to justify it, but you have to keep in mind the fact that this is a guy who's not playing a lot. So, just when you read numbers like this, you got to take it with a grain of salt. You got to take the context with it. It's not like Zether's a bad player. He just wasn't getting the time on his team. That can change as he gets older. That's kind of the whole point. Yeah. So again, the production doesn't look great. It doesn't jump off the board at you with 4 points in 42 games. But when you play 42 games in a men's league as an 18-year-old, and you're not getting a lot of time on ice even. If you're showing enough flash to get picked, that's worth something. That is worth something. That's not saying Zether's going to be a star or anything, but if you want to look at the production and just think, oh, he'll never be anything, that's fine. I used to do that at one point too, but you really need to take these numbers into context and put them in better context if you're going to be able to see the full picture.
The strengths and weaknesses. Looks like a Zito pick again.
Another very Zito type of pick. Grinding physical game, defensive center, good hockey sense. His foot speed will need work. Skating is all right, but the speed needs to improve. And again, offensively, not that creative. I do think Eriksson is a little bit more tantalizing in terms of upside, but I do think that Zether has the skill set needed to become a shutdown defensive fourth line center. And he himself has actually said in his post-draft interview that he models his game after Kevin Stenlund. And I think we all know how well we did with Kevin. I think we all know how well we did with Kevin Stenlund as our fourth line center. So I think if Zether becomes something like Kevin Stenlund, I don't think you're not going to have any complaints from me. But again, it's one of those. It's a speculative buy where it's let's pick this guy as he develops. Rogel will give him more ice time, and you're kind of crossing your fingers and hoping that he'll do better. Yeah. They've done the same thing before with some guys that they picked even out of the Western Hockey League, whether it's Marek Alsher or Grayson Salchin, where it's, the guy didn't play a lot, but he showed enough flash to warrant a pick, and you're kind of hoping that as he gets older and ages into those top minutes more, that, he'll show enough progression to make it worth it. And both of them have done that. So, again, it's not a bad pick.
Very briefly on the last three there, Vince, because we want to wrap up with the top 5 prospects. 2 picks in the 6th round, and then we finish it out in the 7th round, 201st overall.
Yep. So kind of go quick here. So with the 169th pick in the 6th round, we select Stepan Gorbunov, big-bodied Russian center at 6'5", 196 pounds. Pretty much a relative unknown. Central Scouting was the only outlet that I saw that had him ranked. And it's the 99th best European skater. I also want to point out that he is extremely young. His birthday is in August. He hasn't even turned 18 yet at the time of recording. Spent the entire year in the Russian Junior League with Tractor Chelyabinsk system. Sorry, I kind of stuttered a bit there. Putting up 22 points in 40 games, which that production doesn't look great, but there's a reason for that. In terms of his strengths, he's very tall, great size, has a heavy slap shot, and does a lot of work defensively. A lot of times he almost plays like a third defenseman. The problem is that's kind of where the strengths end with him and a myriad of weaknesses begin. He's very slow. Skating needs a lot of work. Lacks pretty much any speed. His puck skills and handling aren't great. Not very active or creative offensively. And all around, he's a pretty below average player. Every game report that I could find on Gorbunov all started with the same thing. Well, he's the tallest guy out there. And then it would be like the next 4 sentences would be, he didn't really contribute to the play. Your eyes watch him because he's big, but then there's nothing really there to watch. He has a heavy slap shot, but he takes forever to get it off, so it's basically useless. I
love when the weakness is just he's not good at hockey.
I'm not trying to laugh at a guy. Again, I'm not laughing. I'm not trying to laugh at someone or dump on this. I'm just reporting what I'm seeing and putting it out here for him. Just trying to give you guys the information.
All right. Next up.
I personally, just brief note on him. I think he might be better off switching to a defenseman at some point. I feel like he might be better at doing that. So just saying, if he's already playing a lot like a third defenseman, he might have more runway to get better as a defenseman rather than as a center.
Yeah, but tall, good at defense. He's Kirby's favorite pick.
Yeah,
our next
and again, it's also kind of that thing that teams have been doing more, where it's, well, we can't teach the size, but we can teach a big guy's skill. Like, look at what Boston did with Jeremy Brazeau, who didn't even have an NHL contract until like December. Right. He's a very big guy, and they got him skill. They taught him skill, and he was a pretty good player for them.
Ooh, an overager here.
Yeah, our next pick coming out of Medicine Hat here, 6'2", 174, as Vince pulls it up here. 6th rounder, 193rd overall.
Coming out of the other side of Alberta, the one where He himself has actually said his family can't wear merch of the team that drafted him
The
around
loser
town.
side of Alberta. but
But the first forward that isn't a center, actually, I was first draft eligible in 2023, so last year. Unranked by pretty much all major outlets. 52 points in 68 games for WHL Medicine Hat, and they had a stacked team this year. Cade Lindstrom, Andrew Basha, Gavin McKenna, who's likely the first overall pick in 2026. In terms of his strengths, he's toolsy, strong motor, he's always working, and he can control the puck well. His weaknesses, he'll lack some separation ability. His passing did progress from his draft year last year to this year, but it still needs a little bit more refinement. And obviously, when you're 6'2" and 174 pounds, you're going to need to add a little bit more strength if you're going to want to be able to transition from that to the professional level. For projection for him, I have him as AHL forward. Could be good organizational depth, and if they need him to come in for a spot start, they could. Absolute ceiling would probably be 13th or 14th forward. But if you have a guy who you can call on, break glass in case of emergency, and play him, it is what it is. If for a 6th rounder, you'll take it. And for our final selection, who I don't have in here,
you can try this name here, goaltender here, 7th round, 201st overall, 6'3".
My apologies to him if I butcher his name. I hope he doesn't send any
Russian
mob guys after me. He's not in here because this is just skaters. I didn't do anything with goalies. That is Denis Gabdrukmanov. Again, 7th round, 201st overall. He's a goalie. 6'3", 187. So again,
he's
needs
a goalie.
to bulk up a bit, but he's a goalie. His numbers in the MHL for Tyumenski Legion, a team I had never heard of before, by the way. Played 40 games with a 255 goals against and a 924 save percentage. His record was 10, 20, and 7, but his team kind of sucked. So he did well. His team didn't.
But now moving on from the guys.
Yeah. Well, hang on. You're forgetting the most important thing about him, which is that his last name is worth 29 Scrabble points, which breaks the record set by 2023 7th rounder Stefan Zvyagan, whose last name is worth 23 points.
But
there's not a lot of information out there on those two. I figured just fun facts. Fun fact. It's a goalie. I won't fault the goalie excellence department. They've done great work.
Yeah.
They took a goalie, and it's a goalie.
Yep. But now with Dev Camp midway here, who are the top 5 prospects you believe are currently in the Florida Panthers system?
All right. I see the clock running here, so I'm going to try and go quick as possible. Obviously, number 1, I'm going to start from 1 and go to 5. Number 1 is Mackie Samoskevich, their first rounder in 2021. Spent all of last year with the Charlotte Checkers. Well, most of last year. 54 points in 62 games. Played 7 games in 2 different stints with the big club in Florida. He's a playmaking winger. He's at his best when he's driving play. He's a very fast skater. And I believe he's likely a 3rd-line right winger in the NHL for 24-25. And does need to work on his defensive game, but it progressed nicely in the AHL. I also want to point out that Jacob Stoller, who covers the AHL a lot on Twitter and does some analytics for them as well, had Mackie Samoskevich as his 5th best forward, under 23 forward in game score per 60, ahead of Shane Wright, who was a top 5 pick in 2022.
I like that.
At number 2, I'm going to go with Michael Benning, 2020 4th rounder, selected 95th overall. Another guy who spent the entire year with Charlotte, putting up 26 points in 72 games. He's a small puck-moving defenseman with strong offensive instincts. I think he's a high-risk, high-reward player because, as you've seen with guys like Adam Boqvist, like Kalen Addison, Eric Brandstrom as well, that it's becoming harder and harder to be a successful defenseman if you're small, unless you have a trade or two that's truly elite. Not my words, the words of Derek Neumeyer, the head Western scout for McKean's Hockey, someone who knows hockey a bit more than I do. He's certainly correct, but I do believe that Benning has the potential, at least in terms of his offensive instincts, to get to the level needed to get to the NHL and stay there. I have faith in him. I'm willing to take the chance on him. He developed very well this season, especially with the increased time on ice after Lucas Carlson went down with an injury. And again, back to Jacob Stoller's game score report, He had Benning as his 5th best under 23 defenseman in game score per 60, ahead of Simone Nemec and Philip Broberg as well. And Broberg came in and did very well for Edmonton in the playoffs. So
Benning really struggled in camp, but like you said, he had a good second half there in Charlotte.
He did. And Mackey struggled in the NHL. Like, he struggled early on, and early on in Charlotte, he struggled as well. But he developed, he progressed throughout the year, and that's what matters with a lot of these young guys. It's how they progress, especially when they're making that transition from college to the pros.
Yep.
Anyways, so third on the list is Grayson Sawchin, a 2023 second rounder, selected 63rd. Last year, he spent all his time in the Western Hockey League with Seattle and Edmonton, the Thunderbirds, and then the Oil Kings. He was traded. His total stats, 64 points in 54 games. Hardworking center, good hands and offensive instincts. He has third-line center upside. I think he can move to wing if needed, though. He has the speed for it.
I'd like to keep him at center.
We all would. But if you got to move him to wing, it's easier to move from center to wing than wing to center.
To be that Bennett replacement down the road, and he plays with some grit.
Potentially. Yep, he plays with grit and tenacity.
I didn't know that about him until Ryburn mentioned that to me.
He brings the lunch pail. And loves to work. So, again, there's always room for that. He'll spend another season in the dub, and then will likely sign his ELC in spring of 2025. For number 4, I'm going with Justin Sordiff, 2020 third rounder, 87th overall. Played 3 games last year with the big club in Florida, then spent 58 games with Charlotte in the AHL for 38 points. He's hardworking, versatile. He can play center or the wing. He can play physical and forecheck if you need him to. And he has middle 6 to top 9 upside. I think probably ends up as a bottom 6 forward, though. But he's a bit of a Swiss Army knife. He can give you a bit of everything. Next year, he's going to be in the AHL for another season, and he'll probably be one of the headliners for Charlotte next year.
He started taking a lot of draws there, too, in camp last year. And was
absolutely. They needed centers. They needed centers, and he slid in, and he did that very well. And then 5th, as I previously mentioned, I have Linus Eriksson in this spot. Again, bottom 6 defensive center with some offensive punch. And I do have a few honorable mentions here that I want to bring up. So the first is Jack Devine, who was a 2022 7th rounder, spent last year with the national champion University of Denver.
Hobey Baker finalist.
Hobey Baker finalist, I was just about to say it. Put up 56 points in 44 games. He's actually going back to school to get his finance degree. And he said the team was very happy with his progress. They were supportive of his decision, and he feels very happy with the support they've given him. So if you're expecting a Zach Hyman situation, the winds don't seem to be pointing that way right now. Just saying. I want to mention a personal favorite of mine, Evan Naus, 2021 second rounder, split time between the Florida Everblades and Charlotte Checkers this year. Smart, cerebral defensive defenseman, good at shutting down plays and killing plays. That's why I call him the fireman. If there's a fire in the defensive zone, he puts it out. Radko Gudas is the butcher. Evan Naus is the fireman. And finally, lastly, I just want to bring up Ryan McAllister, who's brought in as an undrafted free agent. I know that reaction, Cody. But spent the year in Charlotte in the AHL, did very well, 19 points in 37 games, very good offensive player. He's very creative. He was actually number 16 on Jacob Stoller's game score per 60 list among under 23 forwards.
I knew it was coming.
Healthy scratched a lot, though.
He was healthy scratched a lot, but when he played, he was very, very, very good. Again, this is top 20, and he's in that list. And he is the only person who is listed as 4th line time on ice on that list. They didn't play him a lot, but when they played him, he played very, very well.
Dangerous, deadly shot on that.
Absolutely. Phil Kessel-like shot, I believe you said once, Kirby. It's dangerous, yes. And again, it's risky, but I would keep your eye out for Ryan McAllister next year in Charlotte. He should play a lot more. He should play a lot more. The people on video know.
Poor Jordy Kinnear. But
play more, Jordy.
If Josh Davies is 8th, 9th, 10th on our prospect list, I'm betting
he would be. I think he probably would be.
Merrick Allstar is my guy. But
I don't mind him.
Hey, but Vince, I appreciate your time here. Kirby, anything else heading out here?
No, Vince, just can you tell everyone where they can follow you quickly?
Yeah, so on Twitter, you can follow me at the Vincent Shipe. So just the in front of my name. And if you want access to the app, Kirby will put a link to that in the description of this video on YouTube and probably in the podcast description on Spotify as well.
All right.
I appreciate it. Everyone follow our YouTube channel and Instagram channel. Anything on the way out, Cody?
Nothing. I mean, I'll sign us off here. Let's go, Cats.